Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to start by correcting the record about some of the misinformation about trans women's participation in sports and cite some of the data. First of all, since 2004, the Olympics have had a policy that is trans inclusive. And guess what? Not one trans female has actually qualified even at that level. So this is just a totally manufactured concern. Yale University has done a study that actually says that higher testosterone levels do not provide competitive advantage. And the third point, which is completely neglected, is that trans women face bullying, they face harassment. It actually is one of the biggest challenges to compete for trans women. So when we're going to have these conversations, I just hope we could have conversations based on facts, based on data, based on what the Olympics at the highest level are doing, based on what my state in California has done since 2013 and hasn't been an issue, and not engage in conjecture. The second point before I turn to the panel that I want to emphasize is this idea that of the free market. The free market is what we define the market to be. If, as some of my colleagues suggested, that discrimination would not be in the interest of the free market, then what was the need for the civil rights law? Obviously, we needed the civil rights law because there was discrimination even with the market. And what we're talking about is not eliminating in any way the market. It's not against the market. It's saying that we need to define the market in a way that is going to promote dignity for all individuals, because the current definition of the market, the current laws are creating systemic inequality. So this is not a question of do you believe in the market or not? It's a question, do you believe the market should respect the dignity of every individual? My questions, I want to focus on the idea that women, as Kimberly Crenshaw's work has shown, are not a monolith, that we have intersectionality, and that, yes, women face discrimination, but the class, race, and sexual orientation adds barriers. And I want to focus in particularly on trans women in my questioning. If we could go to Dr. Mason, can you please explain what factors have led to devastating economic outcomes for the trans community and what they mean for trans women specifically?
So thank you so much for this question and for bringing Kimberly Crenshaw into the room, a leading intersectional scholar who allows us to understand that it is not only about gender, but also the intersections of race, class, gender, sexuality, gender identity, and other markers of difference. So what we have to know that discrimination, we talk about gender discrimination, but when we talk about trans women, it's really important to know that there are multiple barriers to their economic security, which includes workplace discrimination, refusal to hire, and decreased earnings, especially as people transition, they see a marked decrease in earnings. It's really important. And then if we look at federal and state laws, we also have to know that many of the protections we have on the books, even the civil rights law, discriminates or allows the interpretation of such laws, discrimination against trans women and individuals and communities. So when we think about the pay gap, we don't have enough data to help us understand the magnitude of the problem, but we absolutely understand and know that trans women, trans people face insurmountable, in some instances, barriers to economic security, including lower pay, lower wages, discrimination in the workplace, firing, and not being able to receive any kind of legal remedies. So again, it is really important to provide a fuller context for this conversation, even when we talk about payment and hiring and free market economy, understanding that different women are impacted differently in the economy and in the workforce.
Thank you for that, Dr. Mason. And in fact, You're absolutely right. I mean, the Human Rights Campaign found that nearly 30% of transgender individuals have been forced to take unpaid leave during the pandemic, as opposed to just 7% of the general population. That is more than 4 times as much, the disparate impact on transgender women. I guess I would ask you, what policies can the United States implement as part of the economic recovery to ensure equity for transgender women? And more generally, to consider Kimberly Crenshaw's paradigm-breaking scholarship on intersectionality. How should that inform our policy?
What we need to do is make sure that policies are representative and inclusive and not exclusionary to trans people, making sure that our federal policies and laws, including the Equal Rights Amendment, is gender inclusive and representative. Thinking also about the ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, making sure that it is trans inclusive. These are all things that will go a long way into making sure that some of the challenges we see for trans women in terms of employment as well as earnings and wages over time, we can mitigate those. And the other thing I do want to lift and bring into this conversation, and for the record, is that 15% of trans people report making and earning $10,000 or less per year, a rate of poverty that is nearly 4 times that of the general population. And many report losing a job because of bias and report experiencing some form of workplace discrimination. So we can let the market work, but we understand that the market is imperfect and that we need inclusive and representative laws to make sure that we can close some of these gaps that we've been talking about today.
Thank you. Ms. Pook, could you briefly explain the concept of, quote, chosen family and how the pandemic has placed additional burdens on trans women who care for members of their chosen families?
Essentially, all of us have people in our lives who we care for. We have loved ones, and the definition, who we care for and who care for us. The former First Lady, Rosalind Carter, said there's only 4 kinds of people in this world: people who are caregivers or will be caregivers, people who need care or will need care. And we have in our country an incredibly expansive and non-monolithic, pluralistic way in which we express family, and the ways in which we choose oftentimes who is considered family, who we care for, and who will care for us. It's not necessarily just on the terms of biology. And so, and we believe that it is very important that we have a very inclusive definition of family to support all the ways in which we are caring for the people that we love in our lives, and they are caring for us.
And has the lack of a comprehensive paid family and medical leave program disproportionately harmed trans women because of our exclusive definitions of family?
The gentleman's time has expired, but the gentlelady may answer the question.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think this is a moment to reset our definitions and our frameworks to be as inclusive as possible so that we leave no one behind in our economic recovery. As a group that represents domestic workers, a population of workers who is left out of the New Deal, explicitly excluded from the National Labor Relations Act and the Fair Labor Standards Act, we need to have a very close eye on who we may be excluding in our definitions of our economic policy moving forward, because there are generational impacts and inequities that will continue if we do not do so.
Thank you.